Welcome everybody, this is CaseStudyQB and we are in the Progressive War Room. I'm going to introduce my guest. Assatta Mann is the interim chair of Progressive Democrats of New Jersey and political affairs chair for the Passaic County of Progressive Democrats. Then I have Jason Krychiw, is the Vice-Chairperson of the Progressive Democrats of New Jersey and chairperson of Progressive Democrats of Union County. So with the breaking news, just give me a feedback on what you think about the Coney Barrett getting on the Supreme Court, that whole situation. I'm going to go with Assatta first.
My immediate reaction is to say that I'm not surprised. I think we the minute Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, we all kind of knew that the Republican Party wouldn't have enough decency, and we didn't expect them to not fill that seat the way they did. But I think right now it's just kind of really scary for a lot of people in the country. There's so many things that hang in the balance that are really sort of people's lives. Obviously the Affordable Care Act being one, Roe v. Wade, LGBTQ marriage, all of these things are kind of hanging in the balance now. And I think I'm just really interested to see what Democrats and, other people are going to do now to try to give any of these things a fighting chance in the future.
Yeah, I totally agree. I saw this morning, I think it was, or last night, Chuck Schumer was out there saying how this vote totally made the Republicans lose their sense of honor or morality or something. But I mean, if we're still at the point where the Senate minority leader and top Democrats are saying that's the case now, I don't think they've really learned the playbook. They've learned that they were going to do that. Like Assatta said, I think as soon as Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed, we all kind of knew what the Republicans would do, what Trump would do. And I definitely feel like there is a sense of fear and a little bit of concern about some basic human rights now that might be on the chopping block. And I feel like as much as the Republicans obviously pushed this through, the Democrats in Congress are almost as much to blame for not fighting harder to stop this, for fighting harder to stop the Gorsuch appointment years ago, under the same sort of circumstances. I just think it's there's a lot of blame to go around.
I had a clip on CaseStudyQB Twitter channel with Nancy Pelosi saying, we have many arrows in our quiver. So, and since then we've just been waiting, and where's the arrows? It's not, what happened to the bow is not working. And I think we did see a little bit of pushback from the Senate Democrats. But to me personally, and I don't know this for a fact, but I think I've seen Chuck Schumer recently throw some head fakes to progressives. And that was one of the things they tried to prevent the vote from going through, but that didn't work. And then also I hear about he's been making some statements it's almost like he's worried of a progressive challenger in 2022. I wonder. Chuck Schumer, it'll be interesting to see if AOC challenges him from the left. So I'm hoping to see that happen. But the other question is Biden going to pack the courts? Personally, I would like to see a term limit, like maybe every president, either every term or every 2 terms, a new Supreme Court justice has to come down and we get a new one. So the first question that I have is about the Progressive Democrat of New Jersey. I want to give a shout out to that organization. I'm excited and looking forward to working with them. And I was first introduced when David Rutherford was on my primary ballot, and I looked him up, and that's how I came across the organization. And I know Jason, who was part of the founding of this organization, I'm actually going to go to him first because I want you to give me how this organization started, give me some feedback on that.
Progressive Democrats, the time of Union County, started a little over a year ago. It was kind of the late summer of 2019, so it was fresh off of the primary of that year, where a lot of individuals around Union County had run for local office for things or wanted to run for local office the following year. I'm very involved in Union Township here in Union County. A lot of the other founding members from the area were from Elizabeth, Plainfield, Linden, that general area here. Basically, we all just kind of got in touch with each other because we were doing a lot of work locally, either running for office or trying to hold local officials accountable to make some progressive changes for the people. As you can imagine, they weren't very receptive in a lot of those cases. And so we kind of found each other one way or another. We knew each other from past political things or organizational things. And we said, this would probably be a lot easier to push for change and accomplish some change if we all work together. And, let's work as a county-wide group instead of individually cut off from each other as different towns.
Wow.
And
Okay.
that's how at the time, Progressive Democrats of Union County was formed. And sort of then through doing that work of kind of being this progressive organization alternative to the Democratic Party machine, the establishment party here, we started running candidates. We started fighting for certain issue advocacy, like clean water and things with Newark and Elizabeth that was going on. Sort of through that and getting people on the ballot for the following year running for office, people around the state saw what we were doing in Union County and said, how do we start doing that in our own county? And that's how we went from being a county organization and the Progressive Democrats of Union County to the statewide Progressive Democrats of New Jersey.
Assatta, talk to me about how you got introduced to the organization.
So like Jason said, the first initial chapter was in Union County. And just through being involved in local progressive politics, I knew people who were organizing in Union County. And so, kind of just through word of mouth, through social media, I saw what they were doing. I thought it was really interesting. I thought, wow, here's a group of people putting up their whole line of candidates, to challenge the Democratic establishment. And, they're doing it independently and they're doing it really well. And like Jason said, I definitely wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to figure out a way to bring that to the state county and to do that throughout the state. And so I reached out to one of my friends, Ricky, who was part of the Union County group, and said, who do I have to talk to make this happen? And I think it was about like last May or, kind of early June where we started to get the group together, kind of whoever was interested in doing this in all the other counties. And since then, we've been organizing, we've been building the organization. I think we have 7 county chapters now, about 5 student chapters as well.
Wow.
And yeah, we're working on continued expansion.
That's awesome. I'm excited about that. And I want to ask how other progressive organizations, how you interact with them later. So the next question I want to ask you, so this is a Progressive War Room. I really want to dig into political strategy, and we want to encourage any normal person, anybody out there, to run for office. Usually if you go to an establishment organization, the first thing they ask you is, how much money can you raise? How much people do you know that have 6 figures that they can throw in $2,000 and here and there. But we want to let people know that that's not the only way to run. If you reach out to your local organizations, then people power can really power a campaign. So I want to go to Assatta first and ask you about your experience running, and we'll go from there.
I mean, so I haven't personally run for office, but I have definitely volunteered and worked on some campaigns at this point. Currently, I'm the field director for the Feinberg, Figueroa, and Hernandez campaign. They're running for Elizabeth School Board. And so, my primary role there is to organize and manage our volunteers so that, we have enough people and we're managing our resources to be able to reach out to voters and actually connect with them and get our message out and let them know our candidates exist. This past spring, I was really honored to work on Lawrence Hamm's campaign for U.S. Senate. He challenged Cory Booker in the Democratic primary. There I was the political director, where I was really working on doing outreach to different constituencies, seeing how we can earn their support, earn their endorsement, get them involved with our campaign. And I was a field organizer too. So doing some of the same work I'm doing now, reaching out to voters, making calls, texting, meeting people in person where we can.
Let me ask you this question about Lawrence Hamm's. What were some challenges that you find when he was running and being a part of the inner circle of that campaign? As running as a progressive?
I think, Larry Hamm was a really phenomenal candidate. He was really qualified. He's really knowledgeable. He's been an activist his entire adult life, really since he was about 16. He's been doing some of this movement work. And so you expect a candidate like that to get a lot of support. But when you're running against someone like Cory Booker, who's loved by the Democratic Party establishment, some progressives even give him their support. It was a challenge. And I think some of the big challenges for us, especially, were COVID. And COVID kind of trickled into everything. Number one, we're not running a traditional campaign where we can talk to people in person, where, we have a campaign headquarters. From January up until about March, we were able to meet in person. We were able to have in-person meetings, but really after that, it was all digital, all in person. Our campaign, we had a lot of volunteers and they were really diverse. We had a lot of young people, but we also had a lot of people who were older. And so technology was a huge challenge for us. raising money was perhaps one of the biggest challenges we had. I think when all was said and done, we raised probably around, I think, $67,000.
Okay.
But it was painstaking, and Cory Booker had millions of dollars in his war chest. He was also running for president, so that was definitely difficult and because of COVID, we're people are holding their money tight, right? A lot of people were laid off, people are on unemployment, so that was challenging. It was really hard for us to get any, significant media coverage for a while, and really wasn't until after George Floyd was murdered and Larry's group, People's Organization for Progress, held a really, really successful rally and protest in Newark. It had about, I think, 5,000 people, and it gained national coverage. And that kind of helped to elevate Larry's profile towards the end of the campaign. In some ways, some of the challenges we faced were, I think, insurmountable at a certain point. But I think, despite all the challenges, we all did a really great job. Larry kind of at the top of the ticket with so many other progressive congressional candidates and for even, county offices, local offices. It really put the progressive movement on the spot, I think. Being able to run candidates up and down the ballot throughout the entire state. And, we gained about 118,000 votes despite all of the challenges, despite how COVID might have made things difficult for us. So at the end of the day, I think we did a lot of good work. And I think we won in a lot of ways.
Awesome. I know when I talked to Hector Oseguera, he said that it was very helpful that he was able to run on column A. Somehow you guys were able to secure column A for progressives. And do you have any insight on that? You think that can happen again?
So every county, every county has kind of a different line. So in some counties, our progressives were on line A, and some they were on line B, and some they were on line C. And so that's a huge problem in New Jersey, right? And that's the ballot line system. And the only way to beat the ballot line system, you could challenge it legally, you could have the legislature pass a law, but until then, you kind of have to play within the confines, right? You have to play the game. And so the only way you're able to get column A is to run a whole column of candidates, right? Like if you're just a singular candidate, your chances of being on column A are much less likely. And the Democratic Party always has a full line of it. So I think it's possible again, but it's going to take us really organizing really well, making sure that we are able to recruit and train candidates kind of throughout the state and, really to fill every position from the most local at county committee, council, up until Senate and president eventually, right? So yeah, I think it's possible, but I don't think that's also like our preferred reality. I think we would like to see the ballot line system done away with.
Question I want to ask you, we didn't talk, I just thought about this question. Larry also was the co-chair of the Bernie Sanders campaign. Was the campaign disappointing when Bernie didn't endorse him? That could have helped bring some, notoriety to him, some money campaigns, small donations.
I think we were definitely disappointed. I think people throughout the state, I had people reaching out to me like, why isn't Bernie endorsing Larry? Larry famously started his run to support Bernie Sanders in the Senate if he became president. But I think at the end of the day, it was politics as usual, at the end of the day, Bernie Sanders was a senator and he has his own relationships to maintain. And so it seemed like, his campaign just wasn't willing to take that political risk of endorsing Larry when, Cory Booker is part of the Democratic caucus and, I guess an ally of Bernie Sanders in some ways. That was disappointing, but we still, I think the bigger issue was that in some counties, Bernie Sanders wound up not even being on our line with certain progressives, so that hurt as well, because you had candidates throughout the whole entire state where their slogan on the ballot was "Not me, us," directly calling to Bernie Sanders' message and him telling people run everywhere, run for every office, and then you have someone doing that directly in support of you and you're not willing to take the political risk to endorse them. It is really disappointing.
Okay. Thanks for that feedback. So Jason, I want to go into your background, your running campaigns and even running yourself, and let's dig into the political strategy of things. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I, besides being part of the Progressive Democrats of Union County and the chair here, where we ran a full slate, like I said, in this most recent primary in 2020, prior to that and prior to PDNJ even existing, I had run for office as a candidate myself, locally in Union Township. And like Assatta said, with the campaign she's been on, like you mentioned before, a lot of people think there is this barrier to entry to run for office. And I'm not going to lie, like in some ways there are, but you can overcome those things if you're willing to put in the work. I mean, as an outside candidate or kind of like a non-establishment candidate, biggest disadvantage is money. Like you were saying before, that's the first question people want to ask is how much money are you raising? How much are you spending? People don't want to support you as much if you can't raise the money. But the people power can overcome those barriers to a point. I think it's harder in kind of like a statewide election, like Assatta was saying, when you are going up against a candidate who's raised millions and millions of dollars. But locally, when I run for office, I've been outspent 50 to 1 in some cases. We've raised and spent a couple $1,000s to between $50 and $100,000 in some local elections here. And this I guess it was the primary of 2019. I ran for township committee, like our local town council, myself and a running mate. And we also ran a slate of over 50 people for the Democrat County Committee in Union County. And I didn't win for town council. I lost, but it was close. We lost by about 900 votes. And at the same time, we picked up 15 seats for the county committee. And part of the reason I think we did that was because county committee is hyper local. The districts are divided up by basically neighborhoods in a town. So like in Union, there's 50 different districts. They're basically, they're not really a large area. Okay. So, it's to kind of run for those spots is just about getting out and talking to your neighbors, knocking on doors of, in some cases, people you've grown up next to or you've lived next to for years, and just trying to turn out the vote that way. And that's how we had that success, even though we were outspent by tens of thousands of dollars. That pounding the pavement, knocking on doors, doing things like that really can overcome those things if you can drive out vote and you can let people know that their vote does matter. And a lot of these races, like one of the people who won for office won by a single vote in Union.
Oh, wow.
Others were within single digit votes. Like literally every vote matters. And I think if people kind of realize that and they do mobilize and do the best they can, even as far as bringing, going out and voting and bringing one additional person to the polls or like making sure they go vote themselves, it really does add up. Like speaking both as someone who's been a candidate and kind of seen the numbers come in and followed kind of the work we did, it does show. And then, like this, it's the same thing sort of running a campaign. Like we were saying, we ran a whole slate of people in Union County. And like I was talking about with the way the Progressive Democrats of Union County first started, it was about all of us who were doing things locally or like in our own town, kind of closed off from other people, who realized that if we came together and pooled resources and pooled volunteers and pooled strategy and experience, that we could build something that was comparable, if not better in a lot of ways, than what the political establishment had built over decades. I mean, especially with progressives, generally they skew younger, so you get an advantage on the tech and social media side of things. I feel like honestly they skew more diverse backgrounds too, whether that's race or religion or gender, and it helps reach different audiences. It helps get communities that typically get ignored by the political establishment. It makes their vote matter. It makes their voice matter. And I think that crossover message is kind of how we built up what we did in Union County, which then became the state organization, and how we are continuing to grow from there. It is kind of like an old cliche, but all politics is local. I think you were saying before, we were talking about the federal races and federal things, and not to say that isn't important, but the things that affect you every single day, your property taxes, your parks in the town you live in, whether your street gets paved or not, these aren't things being decided by the president or your congressperson or your senator. It's people in your town council or your local county freeholders or commissioners who are deciding these things. And I think that's like part of our message is not just making sure we're educating people on the issues and getting them out to vote. It's that they're coming out to vote consistently every single year in both primaries and general elections, not just presidential general elections and then taking the 3 years in between off.
One of the things I thought about with COVID, if we can get the whole nation to do mail-in ballots, I think that would increase the amount of people voting, because in New Jersey, one thing that I was impressed by Phil Murphy, our governor, was that he just gave our ballots without, other states you have to request the ballot first and then they'll send it to you and all these different things. He just, for whoever was registered, boom, you got your ballot way ahead of time. I could look up all the candidates. I saw that we have the Socialist and Liberation parties running as a presidential, and I was like, I didn't even know those guys were running, so I had to look them up. Do you think it can be beneficial that for the primaries and for general elections, everyone just get their ballot? And it kind of is a reminder in itself that people say, oh, election is coming up, I gotta vote.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think any things that we do to make voting more accessible, more easy, are definitely a step in the right direction. It's what we need to be doing. There's so many barriers to voting, and it really it affects the whole system all the way up, right? Like, who is sitting in office is, it has a lot to do with how people are able to vote, how people are able to register to vote. And when we make those things more difficult, less and less people are likely to participate. Totally. And the people who are participating, they're less likely to be younger, to be, poorer, to be more working class, to be, Black, brown, or from any type of different diverse backgrounds. So yeah, I think mail-in ballot voting is great. I just think we have to also reckon with the fact that, the postal system is being sabotaged and is actively being destroyed, right? Yeah. And those two things can't really coincide. So we need to be making sure that we're also funding the USPS and making sure that once those votes are cast by ballots, that they're actually able to be delivered. I mean, I think one of the good things in New Jersey is that we do have secure drop-off boxes. So, that's one way to do it. And you're even able to drop off your ballot at your polling site on the day of election.
Yeah, so Jason, I was talking to someone from Fair Vote recently, and they're from California. They were talking about how literally they had something set up like almost like a FedEx tracking, where you can track your ballot from the time it leaves the Board of Elections, for example, and you could track it all the way to it getting to your house, and then you could track it going all the way back. And I was like, wow, that would be a perfect system if we can kind of nationalize that, so that let's say you do have that signature law where there's an extra mark or there's a coffee stain and they want to throw out your ballot, they can kind of tell you, if you do it ahead of time, they can let you know, hey, it was invalid, can you send another one? Yeah,
I totally agree with that. I think we have some form of that in New Jersey too. Okay. I don't like the tracking system. I don't know that it's that
robust.
Yeah, robust, but there is something in place, and I definitely think that is a good idea. So people, because I think a lot of it has to do with the trust of things, like Assatta was saying, we've already kind of seen this assault on the postal service. People might be nervous about putting their ballot in the mail. Totally. Thankfully, in New Jersey, we have the option of dropping it off at the ballot boxes or the voting sites. But I think that kind of tracking at least like reassures people to give them confidence to go vote and do things like that. I think the other day, I think the Governor Murphy said something about how our early vote total is something like 60% of the total vote turnout in 2016 already, with a week left of the election. So people are turning out more. I think it gives the added benefit also of people being able to take their time and research candidates and make informed votes that way. When you have time to take your ballot and sit there at home for days or weeks or however long you're going to look at it, you can look up the candidates. You can plug them all in one at a time. You can see who's got a website. You can see what people's policies and platform is. Because, you may want to vote for a combination of people who are kind of off the traditional lines on the ballot. Exactly. But if you are going to vote in person, a lot of the times, people aren't going to pre-look up a lot of the people or even know to look up certain candidates who are running. And so you might go vote, in a normal election, go into the poll, and it be the first time you see half of the names on that ballot. Yeah. And if that's the case, you're going to kind of fall into your comfort zone and vote down whatever column your party is registered as or whatever it might be. That's why there's not a lot of parity in who gets elected in certain very blue or very red states. Whereas if people had time to vote, had time to research the candidates, exactly. You would get that more informed vote. You would get that diversification, I think, in both the people who are voting and the people who are getting then elected.
Exactly. I want to show you this clip. I'll put it on Case Study QB.
Jersey mail-in votes are already being counted, and several counties are letting you watch as it happens. This is a behind-the-scenes look in Bergen County. Residents can access this camera on the County Election Board's website. And we're told Hunterdon and Union counties are going to be doing the same thing, although the Union County camera is not expected to be up until next Friday. A reminder, ballots must be postmarked on or before November 3rd and receive...
Yeah, I thought that was really cool that they're putting that up and letting people watch. You guys have any insight on that? Or
Yeah, I didn't even know Union County was one of them, honestly, until just a second seeing that video. So I'm definitely going to be checking that out. That's pretty cool. Like we're saying with the whole tracking thing you brought up, I think any level of transparency in this process or communication between the clerk's offices and the elections offices and the people voting, the more that trust can be built up, the more people can see their vote literally being counted and literally mattering. I think that can only help to increase voter engagement and turnout.
And trust. I mean, I remember I lived in New York, you live in New York, and I went and vote one time, and I said, hey, how can I watch the people voting? How can I? And they looked at me like I had three heads. Like, what you mean you want to watch the voting, the counting of the votes? I thought it was just something in a democracy. I thought it was an obvious question to ask, but I'm very impressed. That's why I clipped it up and put it up there that we're doing it, and hopefully that type of thing can continue. Even we see cops have body cams. Like the people who are counting, maybe they should have body cams so that we could see and make sure that everything is up, and it just gives more confidence in the democracy. So there's another idea. My guys in the Political Junkies, we talked yesterday. We had our show yesterday, and we have a think tank segment where we talk about policy that we would love to see come to fruition. And I was thinking about a website called Candidates.gov, and basically the government nationally would fund it and make it available. And basically what it is a social media network for if you have to run for any office, dog catcher, all the way down to dog catcher, all the way up to president, you have to find out what the requirements are. Once you fill that requirement, they'll give you a link that you can register on Candidates.gov. You will have your page, and you can put up videos and put up messaging. And the purpose of this, and this was the idea for the think tank, ban all political advertisement. I'm talking about on TV, and I'm talking about on Facebook. And why? Or Facebook, social media. Two reasons why. It evens the playing field for grassroots candidates over establishment candidates who, like Cory Booker over Lawrence Hamm, who has a ton of money, who can put into TV ads and things like that. And two, we hear about the Russia influencing our elections through advertisement. Well, if you just ban it, and the way the citizenry will get used to just when the election comes around, they go to Candidates.gov, put in their zip code, and I'm just thinking about this off the top of my head. They put in their zip code, and boom, you get all the races coming up, all the different counties, the board of elections, and all those things. Those candidates would have, so they wouldn't even have to make their own website anymore, pretty much. They would just go to this infrastructure. Anyway, I'm babbling on at this point, but I thought that would be a cool idea. What you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's a cool idea too. I think there's like some sites that are similar, right? Like you have sites like Ballotpedia and other sites that will have the information of like candidates, any races going on, and it's, a public resource for voters to be able to go look at that and research candidates, but it's not like a universal thing, right? And candidates have to like opt in to do it. But I think if you had some type of a site, some type of a resource where all candidates had to put, all relevant information, I think that's a huge service for voters who can just go to this one central site and, get all that information. We were just talking about that problem of like you show up in the ballot booth and you don't even know who's on your ballot. This would kind of help to eliminate that. And, the question of political ads, like definitely a huge issue. I think we definitely have to figure out how we balance all of the money, all of, that goes into advertisement, that goes into campaigns in general. Advertising, like, is just super expensive, and candidates who can't afford to put things on the air, on the radio, You know, they're kind of, it's just unfair in some cases, right? But I think that also speaks to like this larger question of like money, how much money is going into politics, where is it coming from? You know, who's able to donate? What are you able to spend it on? You know, I think like in some cases, like, you know, if you're running a local campaign, like Facebook ads could help, right? But if there's just obviously with disinformation, you know, in election interference, there's just these things that we see online. There's no way for people to immediately know if they're true or not. And if you have private companies like Facebook or Twitter who aren't doing their due diligence to flag those things, remove them immediately, I think it just creates bigger problems for democracy. So I don't know, getting rid of political advertisements is definitely an idea I'm willing to think more about and potentially get behind.
Okay, yeah, Jason, like even for people who don't know how to run for something, they could go to candidates. There could be a link to say, hey, run for any office, and you could just go through the steps. You click on, let's say you want to run for president, let's say you want to run for the local state assembly, you could click on that and it'll tell you how to. Like right now, I would have to do research. I don't even know how to run for anything at the local level. I don't know the beginning steps. What do you think? It would be what do you think about the idea?
Yeah, I think actually that would probably be the most important part of a site like that, or the most useful part. I know we were talking before about kind of this barrier to entry to run for office or get involved in politics in the first place. And that's probably the main one. Like when I first ran for office, and I'm sure a lot of younger or progressive candidates go through this too, you know, you're not part of the establishment. You're not part of the political machine. So, you know, the people in charge don't want you to run. They don't want challengers, obviously. So there's not a lot of resources for you saying, oh, I want to run for office. You can't turn around and go to the person you're potentially running against and ask them, hey, how do I get on the ballot so I can run against you? You know, no one's going to give you information that way. And that was the hardest thing for me. I mean, I will say that the people who worked in the, or I say work still, in the Union County Clerk's office and the elections office here where I ran were a huge help. I mean, I was calling them the first time I ran, literally in some cases daily, to make sure, you know, I was getting the right petitions to get on the ballot, that I was getting the right signatures, that I was, you know, filling things out correctly, that I was meeting all the deadlines for filing paperwork. But in certain cases like that, I mean, I didn't even know what the paperwork I had to fill out was in the first place, and in some the first time I ran. But I do think that is the biggest barrier to entry for a lot of people. You know, the government is not super technological or up to date on those kind of things. So it is hard in some ways to just look up online how to run for office besides going through some really dense New Jersey bills or something like that to see like all the requirements, which speaking from experience is what I had to do. And it was not very fun. And it took a long time, and it was like a confusing process. Now I know a ton about that, but it was trial by fire. I wish I could have gone to a central place like that to get that information and run for office that way. Because even when other people want to run for office, the first thing they usually ask is how. And just getting them up to speed on that as someone who knows how to do it, trying to teach someone else, it is a lot of work. Or, you know, like, and I'm in no way an expert on it. I probably know more than most, but you know, I'm sure I don't know all the nuances. But if that was all, like you said, kind of condensed onto a website where people could just go, I want to run for this office, whether it's state Senate or federal Senate or local office, the requirements are there, the petitions are there, the you know, all that kind of stuff. Like, I think you would see a lot more people getting involved in running for office.
Yeah, exactly. All the Secretary of States nationally will have to keep up with this website, making sure the requirements are there, and literally, you know, it would be universal, like Assatta said. I think this would be a game changer for grassroots, hopefully. So I'm curious, there's other progressive organizations out there. You know, we have Democratic Socialists of America, we have Working Families Party, we have Our Revolution. Do you collaborate with them as your organization, and maybe why didn't you join them instead of creating this organization that you created?
Yeah, we definitely do collaborate with progressive organizations, like you mentioned, kind of like the larger statewide ones, like Our Revolution, DSA, Working Family, candidates down to, more grassroots groups like the Sunrise movements in different counties and things like that. Well, the reason we started PD&J as sort of a separate thing is that we felt a lot of these groups existed were more, I guess, issue advocacy focused, which is not to say that we at PD&J are not, but we view ourselves as more of a purely electoral organization. Like our fundamental goal is to get progressive candidates not just on the ballot, but then to help them run for office, to provide resources and expertise and experience to get people on the ballot, have them run a successful campaign, and then get elected. And push for, progressive policies that we all agree on. I think some of these other organizations in New Jersey that are more progressive leaning, again, are like more issue advocacy based, or, they'll endorse candidates who are running for office, who they go to them to seek their endorsements. Like I know Working Families and Our Revolution obviously endorsed a lot of congressional candidates around the state in this past primary. I think PD&J, the goal is basically to take it from start line to finish line, is to train people to run for office. Like we're talking about now, the biggest barrier, I think, is people don't know how to do that. So PD&J offers training, how-tos, soft skills, workshops, and things like that to kind of build this bench of progressive candidates around the state, get those people onto ballots, whether it's locally where they live, at the county level, at the state level, run them for office, be there to help on their campaign throughout the way, and then hopefully get them into office. And so I think that's kind of the focus of PD&J there, which then, is to say, like I was mentioning, we do focus on issue advocacy stuff. Probably our biggest one, like Assatta said before, is the whole issue with the New Jersey ballot line. And just to do some quick background on that, in case people watching don't know, if you have ever voted in New Jersey before, you might even still have your mail-in ballot now. If you open it up and look at it, all of the candidates and the groups are divided into columns based on the party. This is the same in the primary elections, which often means that the kind of party establishment will have their solid column line. That's why they usually get drawn in the first column or the second column. And other progressive challengers who maybe don't have a full line or are running by themselves get pushed all the way off to the side of the ballot. I would suggest anyone watching this look up ballots from previous years, or even look at their mail-in ballot they have right now. And you can see kind of the layout of where people are on the ballot, kind of stuff in what's called ballot Siberia, all the way off to the side of the ballot where they can't even see their names. That's something that we at PD&J have really taken the initiative on in the state to bring awareness to it. A lot of groups, you mentioned like Our Revolution, Working Family have obviously done a lot of good work on that. People like Julius S. Rubin, professor in the state, has done a lot of research on the line and has the data to show that it is an advantage, the way our ballot is set up, that helps establishment incumbent candidates. And New Jersey is the only state in the entire country who has their ballot set up like this. We're the only ones. Every other one has something like bubble ballots where it's separated by office. So, you're voting for the people. You're not just voting for a column letter. So that all is to say is that PD&J we have a associated legal defense fund that we've used to be the primary funders of a lawsuit against the ballot line and the unconstitutional makeup of it in New Jersey. In doing that, we formed a coalition across the entire state where we have a steering committee of dozens of grassroots and statewide other progressive organizations who are, want the line changed also. The coalition is very diverse between, like I said, a lot of more maybe countywide grassroots organizations. Diverse groups like CARE are part of this. Some of the indivisible chapters, Our Revolution and Jay was one of the signers on our initial announcement letter of the lawsuit. Wow. And so, on those things, obviously there are crossover. I think all of the truly progressive organizations in the state have the same end goals in mind as far as what kind of changes we want to see in the state and in the country. And in those ways, we definitely want to work with those groups. I mean, I think the detriment to groups like that is like progressive movements can fracture at some times, or there'll be infighting, or ego gets involved, or anything like that. That's something I'm really proud of PD&J is that I think we are, like an action and words group. We don't just talk about doing these things, we act on them. And I think that has helped us in working with these other progressive organizations and forming these coalitions and steering committees, is that people in New Jersey Jersey, like you were saying, we want a New Jersey squad. We want the progressive movement to explode in New Jersey, and we are only going to get that by working together on these issues and getting candidates on the ballot and then elected into office.
Do you have a base of volunteers? Like, I know that's probably one of the hardest things starting off.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I think in Union County and certain counties, depending on kind of what has happened there, it's like a little bit different. Like I said, Union County was the initial county group in the organization. And so we had the advantage of having run a full line of people in this most recent primary. So we had a full slate of candidates. We had volunteers who were helping those candidates. And we have a large group of members for the Progressive Democrats of Union County. Other counties who are joining the organization are newer. So they have maybe like a little bit of a smaller foundation of starting off.
Yeah.
But we are gaining people by the day.
Nice.
Chapters who are interested in joining from places in New Jersey where we don't have chapters yet. Yeah. People in places we do have chapters who want to be part of what we're doing. So yeah, we are still a young organization, but we definitely are building a big volunteer base, a big membership base to hopefully make this sustainable for years to come.
That's something we could strategize about that in itself, like getting volunteers and getting organized with that. So Assatta, with your experience with the Lawrence Hamm campaign and even with your current campaign, how has these organizations helped you?
I think it's, like Jason said, there's progressive organizations who will endorse candidates, and that's phenomenal to have their support, but you really need, for your endorsement to be meaningful, it needs to go beyond kind of just like a social media post, right? Like we need then for organizations to lend their people power to candidates. Nice. Yeah. Because getting and maintaining an active volunteer base is one of probably the biggest challenges of running a campaign. I mean, I could say, with this current race I'm helping run in Elizabeth, we just got the Sunrise Union County endorsement. Nice. And that was phenomenal because they have so many young people who are hyper aware and they really care about the issues going on right now. And, we have young candidates who they could relate to and they jumped behind and gave their support. And, where we had, a lack of volunteers, where we were struggling there, they've kind of just swooped in and set up phone banks for us, right? Like they're willing to come help us drop lit. I mean, I would say with Larry's campaign, we had so many endorsements. We had endorsements of probably nearly almost every progressive political organization in the state. And, for me as political director, seeking out those endorsements, again, like I didn't just want a paper endorsement. I want an endorsement where, okay, can your volunteers help us make calls, or, can we speak to your membership? Can we, if you're more policy and issue oriented, can you help us on the issues? Can you help us communicate this? Can we do a town hall with you? So, progressive groups were really important and useful there. But also I would say kind of just in regards to having a coalition, all of these progressive organizations who endorsed us and the other candidates, we were all running on a team. We were all spreading the same message, hitting the same issues over and over again. And so that was really helpful because if we didn't have a lot of volunteers in, let's say, South Jersey, we were lucky to have the endorsement of Our Revolution Atlantic County or Cape May County Indivisible, and they were able to help us push the word out there. And they know their people and their neighborhoods better too.
Nice. So that's something that I just learned from talking to you. Like I want our audience or my audience to hear what you just said. Like if you join, first of all, I want you to join and look up your local organizations, whether it's Our Revolution, DSA, Working Families Party. But when you join and you reach out to these people, find out how active are they? Like, do they help the people that they endorse? Do they help raise money for them? Do they help volunteer, phone bank? Like, you want to join a organization that is active and not just doing what Assatta just called a paper endorsement, which is just like sending out one tweet and then that's it. So make sure when you join, and then if they're not doing that, maybe you need to hook up with Jason and start a chapter of Progressive Democrats in your area, in your county, so that you can make sure that you start an organization that is truly walking the walk and talking the talk and being active. So I want to get to ranked choice voting, which is one of the passion topics for myself with Medicare for All. But Voters Choice NJ is a ranked choice voting organization, non-partisan, New Jersey, that is growing, and I'm getting active with them. And I want to get both of your opinion on ranked choice voting, and I'm curious even if that would solve the ballot line, or if that could be solved at the same time with the ranked choice voting. So Assatta, I'm going to go to you first.
So Jason just gave a lot of background information on the issue of the ballot line in New Jersey, and it takes away voters' choice, right? Because you're immediately prompted and your eyes are drawn to the candidates who maybe seem the most qualified because of who they're running with, right? The slogan they might have, and that's not necessarily reflective of any work that they're doing to actually reach out to voters. So a system like that, I think, takes away choice from voters, and we want to see that system and that done away with. And I think ranked choice voting is another kind of voting reform that we can do that gives voters more choice. Something I hear so often from people, whether, they're like, I don't care about politics or I don't want to vote, is that they think their vote doesn't matter, right? And in some cases, like, it might be true. Your vote doesn't matter, because if you're giving your vote to, let's say, a third party or a lesser known candidate who, some people might say has no shot, then you feel like you threw your vote away. But I think with ranked choice voting, even if your number one choice didn't wind up winning, at least you were able to still cast a second ballot and you get your second choice maybe, right? And I think any systems that are going to more choice are going to make sure that their vote means something and that people know that it means something. I think it restores more confidence to the system of voting, to democracy, and I think it takes us in a good direction.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like we just went over how PD&J is very involved in abolishing the line in New Jersey, and something we've even talked about as an organization is, kind of like the next steps, like if the line got abolished, now what? And that's why we think that ranked choice voting and abolishing the line are kind of like a 1A, 1B situation. They almost go hand in hand in a way, because they are both about ballot reform. They are both about increasing voter access to voting for, a variety of candidates. And just, engaging the public better and have them be better informed. I think Assatta, you hit it on the head. I mean, you see it with the presidential election too, especially amongst younger people. They are not enthused to vote for Biden or Trump. I think most people would agree that one is worse than the other, or maybe you wouldn't. But you have these other candidates. New Jersey, I don't even, 6 or 7 people are on the ballot for president. And, you get things like vote shaming because people say, oh, if you're voting for the Green Party candidate or the socialist or the libertarian or whoever else, you're throwing your vote away, or you're by process of elimination voting for the worst candidate. You're essentially giving your vote away so the worst candidate can win. With ranked choice voting, that gets eliminated because you can vote for your first choice, and if they don't get the required percentage, and the votes have to get reallocated on your second choice is one of the main candidates, you still got to vote your conscience. You got to vote for who you wanted for. There was no vote shaming involved. But at the end of the day, then the candidate most like your initial choice would still end up winning in that scenario. You wouldn't be helping to elect someone that the minority of people want. You'd still be able to vote for people who you agreed with and who you actually supported.
We got 4 minutes left. I wanted to ask Jason about, he actually had a negative advertisement against him in the past. I don't know which campaign that was. I wanted to talk to you about that. We wanted to talk about Progressive Gauntlet. But the last question I want to just throw out there with the last 3 minutes is, do you think the word progressive is getting watered down? You have Hillary Clinton talking about a progressive who, I'm a progressive who can get things done. Recently, Clyburn said, "Hey, we're all progressives," So I'm not going to lead the witness. I'm going to say what I feel about it.
So yes, I think there are people who are using the label progressive who are not progressive, right? I think we like to call them progressives. And I think it's definitely a problem, but what all I think it means is that the people who are genuinely progressive, genuinely have, values, that are progressive, that are left leaning, they need to be more and more bold, so that people like, Hillary Clinton, who is not progressive and stands in the way, in some cases stands in the way of real progress being made, into making, this democracy work for more people, so that they're not able to make those claims. And it's like, it's night and day between people who are real progressives and people who aren't. But I also think, like, with any kind of label, it's not necessarily black and white. Like, someone who's a progressive in Hudson County looks a little different and runs on issues that are a little different than someone who's a progressive in Hunterdon County. So I think, like, if we have some standards and we have some, principles and values that are universal and we can all agree on, that's important. But I also think that there does have to be some room for flexibility, but, like, we should be able to recognize very clearly who is not a progressive and who is actually standing in the way of progress.
For like a short answer, 100% I think it's being watered down. And I think it goes to what Assatta was talking about, where you can have that gray area when you kind of get into hyper local things, but there are just certain issues, like you have candidates running for federal office who don't support Medicare for all and then call themselves a progressive. I mean, I feel like that's like one of like the 5 things you probably need to support in order to call yourself that, and people aren't doing it. Like that, the Green New Deal, just these, to me, kind of no-brainer progressive policies people don't support, but then call themselves a progressive anyway. And I think it's just something that progressives especially have to be aware of, is being mindful of how maybe local issues or like different districts might be different on certain issues or progressive leanings, but also recognize that, people who are masquerading as progressives who don't believe in a lot of those big core issues, we should be holding their feet to the fire and demanding better from them.
Totally. So my opinion on this is, the progressive term is getting watered down, and I had a little, we had a little mini debate with my guy Gabe from Political Junkies, that I'm thinking of the mindset that we should probably lean towards the democratic socialist term. I don't consider myself a socialist, but I definitely would fit comfortably in a democratic socialist. And the thing about that term is that Hillary Clinton is not going anywhere near that. Biden is not going anywhere. Any establishment does not want to go near that term. But I also understand his point was there's certain places that you just can't even call yourself any type of socialist. And I understand that point too. So I'm wondering if that's going to happen. But, it could 10 years from now, 15 years from now, we have AOC, who's probably the most popular democratic socialist. Once that become normalized, then you're going to see that happen again with the word progressive, where people are going to be like a watered down socialist or whatever. So that's something we could talk about and strategize. I would like to thank Assatta Mann for coming, and Jason Krychiw. Thank you so much for coming on the Progressive War Room, and I look forward to organizing with you, strategizing with you in the future, and moving New Jersey. We're going to get our own squad. I can't wait for that to happen, and we're going to move forward. Any last words?
Thank you so much for having us on. It's definitely been an honor, a privilege. I guess I just want to end by plugging PD&J. If you're interested in joining us, you're interested in learning more, starting a chapter, you can find us at njprogressives.com. We actually have our first statewide annual convention and business meeting coming up on November 14th. It's a Saturday. And so we have tickets on our website. You can find them there. We, at our business meeting, it's going to be very transparent. We want to have a model of what the Democratic Party and what all parties could be by being very transparent in, what we do in terms of our financials, our policies, our platform. And we're also going to have the opportunity for people to hear from speakers, keynote speakers, people who are organizing, people who are in the movement at the forefront of this, teaching skills so that people can be better organizers. And we'd love to have you there and have you join us.
Totally. And I also want to plug that you are, again, helping out.
Feinberg, Figueroa, Hernandez, vote column 2 if you're in Elizabeth for school board. We could definitely use some support. We only have about 7 days left of this election. So. Yeah,
like Assatta said, thank you so much for having us on. I know we didn't even get to all the we were talking so much we didn't even get to all the topics we wanted to, but I think I would speak for Assatta that we would definitely come back at some point to keep going. I had a great time discussing some of these things.
Awesome.
And yeah, if you're watching this and you are in New Jersey and you like what you heard from either of us or about PDNJ, definitely visit njprogressives.com. There is a chat function there. There is a contact link there to reach out about general info for becoming a member of existing county chapters, for chartering a chapter and starting one up in counties where we might not have one yet. So yeah, check out our website. There is the convention tab there. Like Assatta said, November 14th. The theme of it is about the future of democracy in New Jersey, and, you know, kind of justice and accountability and equity in the state. It's a very important conversation, obviously. We want to include as many people in it as we can, because, you know, we the people are the ones who are going to be shaping that future. And so the more people who are a part of that conversation, the better it will be for us as individuals and us as a state. So check us out again, njprogressives.com and PDNJ. Thank you so much for having us.
Totally. So next time we'll definitely talk about your other initiatives, the No Police Union Money Pledge. I see it on your website, the Legal Defense Club Fund. I believe you talked about that. And all right, thank you so much. And we're going to continue to strategize together. This is how we mobilize. This is how the grassroots get together and strategize and volunteer for each other and learn about each other. And I look forward to having you again. Like and subscribe. Talk to you later.